What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to XOXO to PlayStation. So, we are talking about E3, and we will be talking about Xbox today. So let's dive right into it. So, for me, Xbox is episode 2 because, again, PlayStation's the thing I pay attention to the most because PlayStation is what I love most. If that's not fucking apparent by this point, don't know what to tell you. But Xbox is still something that I highly care about. It's something I still love. I am intrigued by the Scorpio, which will be the centerpiece of their E3 conference for the hour and change, more than likely, of their E3 conference. The Scorpio probably will dominate. It depends on how you want to divvy it up. But I think just talking about the Scorpio itself, what it means, what's capable of, blah, blah, blah. I think it's going to take anywhere between 15 minutes to 10 minutes, maximum 20 minutes. And I don't even think they should touch 20-minute marks with it. I think, again, much like what Nintendo needs to do in the last episode, they need to focus on games while balancing, a good chunk on the new content of the console. So 15 minutes, I think, is a sweet spot to talk about Scorpio. 10 to 15 minutes, and I think that's a good estimate for them because that'll give plenty of time to, again, detail how powerful it is, to talk about, what it's capable of, how it's going to do its backwards compatibility, how it's going to function in terms of HDR, what's going to look like HDR-wise, and 4K and all that, how it does its 4K, and all that will be broken down in pretty simple terms for the consumer audience that'll be watching and listening. So they won't go super technical, but it'll be technical enough. I think they'll also showcase, what it looks like, obviously. They'll show, what the power brick system looks like in terms of how the power works, what kind of HDMI it uses, the new headset, the new controller scheme. What the new controller will look like, which my hope is that they don't really change much. I don't know why they would. Pretty much you could just use an Xbox One controller and be fine. It would be cool if it came bundled with a Pro controller. That would be cool, but that would mean that the price tag is going to be a lot higher than I'm guessing it at, which is what I'll get to here in a second. I think it's going to be roughly the size of what the original Xbox One was, maybe a little bit smaller, but roughly that size. It's not going to be the size of the Xbox One S. It's going to be bigger, by far. But will be a little bit smaller than the original Xbox One. I don't know if it's going to have a power brick. I think it'll just have a direct cord. I think that's the route it's going to go. I think that's smart. I think it's going to have the HDMI 2.0, which is, the higher end HDMI cord that's out now, I guess. I think it will get bundled with all of that. It's going to have a new headset involved. It's going to have all this and that. And they'll go over that. I think they'll also potentially talk about HoloLens and how that might be incorporated into the new Kinect. And then pretty much they'll discuss, this is what the Scorpio is going to do with HoloLens and the new Kinect, the Kinect 3.0, which will be potentially with the Scorpio. Because I think at this point they have to have Kinect around still for HoloLens, I think. I think those are too tethered together at this point to separate it. So I think both of those combined with the Scorpio, that'll all kind of wrap up into about 15 minutes of just talking about the hardware, where they're at, what it's going to do, what's going to perform like, what it's going to look like. They'll talk about, how that's going to look with the games. And yeah, I think that's where they're going to be at. And then, of course, the price tag. So I think the Kinect 3.0, if there is one, which I think there will, but you never know. I think that thing will have the same price tag as the original Kinect 2.0. I think it's going to stay the same price. I don't see why they need to increase it. I think if HoloLens is coming out this year, if it's still a thing, I haven't heard really much about it in a long time, but if it's still a thing, if it's bundled with the Scorpio and the Kinect in terms of coming out at the same time, I think it'll probably have a $250 price tag, maybe $300, just because it's not necessarily VR, but it's not. It's in its own little niche. So I think a $250, $300 price tag would probably be solid for it, but I don't know. I don't know the full capacity of what that thing can do. I need to still do a little bit more research into it personally, just to kind of get an idea of this is what this thing can do. And lastly, the Scorpio. There is no way, in my mind, this thing is going to sell at 400. 6 teraflops, it's doing the closest it can to a 4K resolution at native on everything. The best way I could describe it is, as far as I understand it, it is a mid-tier to mid-high tier modern modern computer right now. So essentially, it could do ultra at 1080p at 60 frames just fine, or it should be able to just fine, depending on the optimization of the games. Which that's another conundrum that PlayStation's even ran into, because PlayStation can do a lot of games at 1080p 60 frames locked, that the developers just can't optimize to that because they have a lot of other things going on that they want to kind of focus on. I mean, Uncharted 4 could easily have been 1080p 60 frames consistent, but because of the Pro, they didn't do 60 frames. They wanted to do 1080 and potentially even checker box up to 4K with HDR. It's all developer based, and it's all about what is the most important thing for that developer, along with what's most important for the game. So the whole argument that I see on the internet all the time, like, why is this game not 60 frames? It's not because of the console. It's usually because the developer doesn't optimize for that. And that's internal, what they want to value most. Do they want to value graphics and what the game looks like over performance, or do they want to do performance over exactly how beautiful the game can be? Because sometimes developers have to pick, especially with console gamers, and especially if they want to get their game out in a timely fashion, right? But that's a whole other argument for another time. Really, the Scorpio is going to be able to do a lot of powerful shit because it's a step ahead of the Pro. Because the Pro is at like 4.8, 4.6 teraflops. And in itself, the Pro is pretty beastly, but the Scorpio is going to be a whole other beast. Now, I've said in the past, and I still stand by it, that the Scorpio does need to have a relatively big reason to get it, besides just being the most powerful home console. Because for me, as of right now, the only reason to get a Scorpio is to play Xbox games at a better resolution if you don't want to invest in a computer. Because the Play Anywhere initiative basically signifies to me, like, hey, you can build your own PC and run all the Xbox games on that thing, basically. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, not in the slightest, but that's something to consider. And that, to me, proves kind of a sour note, because then, for, again, me, it's one of those things where it's like, well, then what's the point in the Scorpio if I could spend, even, an extra $400 and build a rig that's going to last for fucking ever, right? Or not maybe forever, but for a long fucking time. So that's something that I've considered, like, how is Microsoft and Xbox going to approach, the conversation of, this is what we're doing now with the Play Anywhere initiative, this is how it's going to operate with the Scorpio, and this is the reason why you want a Scorpio. Because as of right now, the Play Anywhere initiative is going to throw kind of a monkey wrench into the whole, the Scorpio is important, and here's why. Because then the counterpoint to that I have right now is, cool, but I could build a rig for probably the same price, and maybe even better. Because, for $500 or $600, I could probably build a PC rig that's pretty awesome, that'll last a little bit longer than the Scorpio, theoretically. So my hope is that, and this is my thinking, that Microsoft and Xbox pretty much are looking at the Scorpio as almost like a clean slate, and they're going to basically approach it as, we're not going to abandon the Xbox One. We're still making, it's going to be like the Pro. We're going to make games for both platforms. Really, the Scorpio is going to have upgraded abilities for it, like HDR compatibility. It's going to have better frame rate, blah, 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 blah. It's going to have patches that unlock the true potential, essentially. And it's mainly going to start with the internal studios, and then the AAA sphere. Now that the Pro and the Scorpio are out, they're going to start making patches for both of them versus just the Pro. That's why I think a lot of the AAA games that aren't exclusive to PlayStation haven't really done that yet. They're working on those patches so that when the Scorpio comes out, both consoles will have the ability to play a lot, more games at that resolution, and blah, 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 blah. But again, it's going to be important for the Scorpio to have the right lineup. As of right now, Crackdown is probably going to be the big E3 title because Scalebound has been canceled and pretty much thrown away. Sucks. Fucking sucks. But that's what's happening. And as far as I understand it, Crackdown is really the only big game they have right now because Sea of Thieves is coming, but to be honest, I'm not that impressed by it. It has great potential, but I'm not that impressed by what I've seen so far beyond just the initial concept of it. For me, I just go, cool, it looks cool, but it doesn't seem like it has as much in it as I kind of hoped it had, and it seems like it could crash and burn if they don't approach it correctly. That said, I've been wrong before. I've also been right before, so we'll see. So I hope Sea of Thieves ends up being better than I expect it to be. I hope that Cuphead is a launch title for the Scorpio. I think that would be huge. Because Cuphead has been in development for a long time. And that game looks incredible, but it needs to come out at this point. If it's in gestation any longer, people are going to really stop caring about it. So they need to get it out. They need to get into the wild, and it needs to, it needs to be sweet. And I think it will be. It needs to get out. So I think Cuphead will be kind of like what Resogun was for the PlayStation 4. I think Cuphead will be a fantastic launch indie game that's free for Xbox players for that month, and be like, hey, here's this game that you've heard for forever. It's free. Play it. Love it. And it might get a lot of people, like, as a bundle, be like, oh, fuck, on top of getting live with the Scorpio, I'm not only going to be able to play Crackdown as a launch title, but I'm getting Cuphead, too. Both these games look awesome. So I think those things are important. I think also they need to bring out remasters for the rest of the year once Scorpio hits. I think it'd be smart for them to approach it as, we're making Scorpio exclusives, quote unquote, of old games, basically. So essentially, I think the Scorpio needs to have a lineup that can make people care about it that's only on the Scorpio. Because at this point in time, the Scorpio is quite a bit more powerful than the Xbox One. The PS4 and the Pro difference is substantial, but it's not huge. It's not a huge issue. But with the Scorpio to the Xbox One was less powerful than the PS4 by a little bit, by enough. The Scorpio is going to be a huge difference. So that's only going to cause issues for the developers in-house and for other developers at other studios to make games, for both platforms. Like, that's going to cause a lot of issues. I think the smart thing for the Scorpio to have is, hey, we're going to remaster old Xbox games and old franchises we haven't touched in a while, old games that aren't going to go to Xbox One, but they're not brand new games. They're games that you can play through the the backwards compatibility of the Xbox. That's the way they can pitch it. Like, if you want to play these games, you can on the Xbox. But we're making the remastered versions, these remade versions for the Scorpio, because we want to use the Scorpio's full potential for these games and make these as good as they can be. I think good examples would be Knights of the Old Republic 2, Fable 2, 3, 1. I think 1 and 2 would be the perfect ones. Munch's Odyssey. I know I brought up in the last one that they should do that, but I think that Munch's Odyssey and Stranger's Wrath would be awesome for the Scorpio. And just games like that. Jade Empire, things like that. I think those kind of games would be a great pitching point for, like, hey, you want the Scorpio, but you're afraid there's no actual, like, exclusives beyond, just crossover games that might potentially be holding the Scorpio back. Well, we're remaking these games to utilize everything the Scorpio's got. But in the same vein, that also will alienate. So I don't know what exactly Xbox is going to do. But I do think they need to get a lineup together that will take advantage of the console. I do think they're going to announce new IPs, hopefully. But we'll see what it is. I don't exactly know what exactly they're going to announce. So it'll be exciting. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you have any theories on what's going on with Xbox, let me know. Thanks for watching. Peace.